Thank you for the invitation, for being here at the panel. I thought that was such a nice and very thoughtful idea on discussing domestic violence through the lens of our equality legislation and the 9 grounds. So I'm very happy to be here today to give some insights on our work and everything. My name is Valeria Aquino, like you mentioned. I am a migrant woman from Brazil. I came to Ireland in 2012 for a 6 months course, very short. And here I am 10 years later. So I love the country and I met my partner and I decided to stay, and I'm very grateful for it. I love Ireland. I am social worker. I have a degree in social worker from Brazil. I worked there. So I'm working in this sector for over 20 years now. Here in Ireland, I work for the Immigrant Council of Ireland. I am the coordinator for 2 helplines. One is the Anti-Racism Support Service, where we provide support to victims of racism and discrimination, all under our equality legislation and all the legislation we have available to cover racism and discrimination, of course. And I am the coordinator also for the Community Navigators, which is a project that provides support to migrant women victims of domestic violence. So at this project specifically, it's myself as coordinator and 6 more women from different nationalities. So they can focus on their own community and how to outreach and how to communicate about the services and provide support to the woman according to their needs. So it's a very, of course, we have like a more general methodology of work, but we try to tailor especially our outreach to really provide the best services we can depending on their culture and their needs. So we have a lady from Brazil, another lady from the Pakistani community, one lady living in direct provision, another lady from Mongolian community. So like it's very diverse. And this is very good as well, even as experience for us as service providers, because we can have the very broad viewing on how to really reach out and what are the needs from this group. Of course, like as a migrant woman myself, working for a migrant rights organization, I will be focusing on migrant women, which is connected to, which fall under the race on our equality legislation. So will be my focus for my talk today. As a migrant woman, I think like we grow up in a different country with different cultures. So of course, like our understanding on violence, on domestic violence and gender-based violence, it is a combination of course, what our life is, what is around us, our culture and everything we are living. So of course, myself as Brazilian, my viewing on what domestic violence is, what gender-based violence is different than a woman from Pakistan, for example, because her lived experiences are different than mine. But one thing I can say for you for sure, like any woman, no woman at all like to be abused. Any woman accepts the abuse. And this is the reason why they come to us for support. So the thing we need to really keep in mind is like the cultural background of that client. It doesn't change the need of her to reach out for support, and doesn't change the fact that she's not happy and she wants to change. She wants change. So of course, like for example, we have the cultural aspect of your client. It is something that affects your ability of supporting, because of course their values are different. So for example, we have clients that they have a very strong family value and they feel very threatened with the idea of being a separate woman from a broken marriage. They feel like this is affect their honor of their family would not support the separation, because they feel that it's like a stain on the family if a woman is separate from her husband. And so the only difference is maybe this woman, she would take a little bit longer to decide to leave, because she has all this weight on her that she needs to follow this tradition and this thing, even though that she's now in a completely different country with a completely different culture. She still have these values on her. She still carry this cultural background with her. Of course, like even the countries that are more conservative, they are changing. Like I can see even Brazil, that is a little bit more progressist. Like from my mom is 72 years old, like her viewing on domestic violence, on gender-based violence, it's completely different than mine, a 42-year-old woman. That is completely different than my sister, which is 10 years younger than me. So like through the generations, you have this change and this switch of like the role of women in society and what is acceptable or no in a relationship. And so we need to always be really open to talk and to listen from them, to be able to understand better their reactions. But this doesn't stop us from giving and providing them the best service we can. Of course, like with all this cultural background and all this pressure from your culture, when it's very hard for you to decide, okay, so I'm leaving the relationship. But so when we decide to leave the relationship, we face some barriers that is not common for like an Irish woman that it lives here, speaks the language, and have more facility on reaching out the services. Of course, like as a migrant, we come here most of the time just ourselves, or ourselves and our partners, ourselves or partners and our kids. Like we leave behind the whole support system we have when we are born and living in the same country our whole life. Like from my family from Brazil, I am the only one here. My closest friend is my cousin that lives in Switzerland. So it's not the case if I need the support, I can just pick up the phone and say, can you stay with my daughter for 1 hour so I can go to somewhere else? Like that doesn't happen with migrant women, because we miss all this support system. Of course, as well, like we have, because you are here most like with your partner, you rely on your partner a lot, like financially, for example, for many reasons. Like most of the time is not the woman's decision to be financially dependent on the partner. It can be due to a visa restriction, like the stamp 3, for example, visa. The stamp 3 is the visa you get if your partner is coming to Ireland as like a general permit, work general permit visa. And so if your partner is coming to Ireland to work in a general permit, they give you the stamp 3 visa. The stamp 3 visa don't allow you immediate access to work. You can work, but in order to work, you need to first find a job. And so your employer would have to apply for a permission for you. And what happened is most companies, they have no idea how the visa system works, and they would just not select you to work because they think that it's a big work and that you have to wait a lot until you get the permission. And so like this stop women from access the job, the workplaces as well. Also, like here in Ireland, the childcare, it's very expensive. And being a family with just one source of income, at the end of the day, it's the only option you have is for you to care for your kids yourself, because you are not able to pay for any support for childcare, for example. And so the woman end up staying just in the house. And for this reason as well, this have another negative impact on her, which is like an emotional and a social dependency on this partner as well, because most of the time, like your partner and your kids, they are the only people you have access to and you have a relationship with in the country you are in. And so, for example, if you, as you don't have all the support system you have, you need to rely on this person that is abusive to you to do everything. And also, because you depend on him so much, it is hard for you to navigate the system independently. So it would be harder for you to reach out for information, for example, on how to find support, because you don't speak the language properly, because like how we start to learn English and you are not practicing because you are constantly just speaking your language. Like we do have clients, for example, that it's in Ireland living for over 10 years and don't speak English at all, living with their partners. Because of this, because it's part of the abuse, this control of the victim. And it's very intentionally not giving her the access to learn the language. And so she would be dependent on him, even to go to the chemist to buy a medicine or to go to the GP, or your partner became like your interpreter. And for an abuser, this is a perfect situation. He has completely control over all the information you access. And so this is something that it's very particular of migrant women for victims of domestic violence, is they are very extremely isolated due to the language and due to completely lack of the support system they have. Of course, just a second, let's see my notes here. And so like, even though when they wish to and they find the information they need, and okay, like I'm a migrant woman, I know about Women's Aid and I want to contact them for support. Most of the organizations working with supporting victims of domestic violence, they work a lot through the phone. And for women that doesn't domain the English too well, to have a conversation in the phone is really challenging. I know, like myself, like I arrived here 10 years ago, but I just felt really, really comfortable on picking up the phone and dealing with something, even like my bank or in college or anything, like maybe like 2-3 years after I arrived here. Because one is like you need to really be able to listen the person properly, and you have all the accents and things like this. It's very hard. It looks like it's not, but it is very difficult. And also because like you don't have this connection with the person that is there, because you were always like, I don't know if I will be able to tell her with details what's going on. Will she understand what I'm saying, or I will just waste my time with this call? And so it's really stop women, especially the ones that have difficult with the language on reaching out to the services. Also, like the interpretation services, we know that a lot of organizations, they have already, but of course they are not available all the time. And you need to sometimes call and arrange for the interpreter to be there. Or sometimes, like I know, I think Women's Aid, they have the phone interpreters as well. But even to be able to find the interpreter, you need to be able to pick up the phone and say you need the interpreter. So it is hard as well for her even to have this first step. And one issue that we have, and we are consistently listen from our clients, is regarding to the quality of interpretation services. Like I heard like everything you can imagine about problems with interpretation. Like we had a client that she had an interpreter in court accompanying her for a hearing, and she had to correct the interpreter all the time because she wasn't translating properly what she was saying, and she was scared that she would be misunderstood in court. Like this is very serious issue. We had a Brazilian girl as well that she asked for an interpreter, and they provided her for an interpreter in Portuguese, but Portuguese from Portugal. not Portuguese from Brazil. And Portuguese from Portugal, it's different than Portuguese from Brazil. There is a lot of like wording is different. Like it's like if of course you can understand, but if you are dealing especially with more technical information you want to pass to the client, like about her legal rights or something really more specific, that it is better that she has the Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese interpreter instead of just Portuguese from Portugal. So you make sure she really understands what the person is saying. Of course, other supports, for example, that for Irish women would be easier is like the social welfare and housing. It's very complicated for migrant women. One, because we don't understand the system. We have no idea like where to go or which kind of support is available, like if I am entitled to or no. Like the lack of information is huge. And of course, like you need to be entitled to have these supports to be able to reach out to them. And depending on your visa, you can't, like a stamp 2 holder visa person, for example, she cannot have access to social welfare or housing. Or also, for example, for undocumented migrants, which is also, it's very common that a woman became undocumented due to the abuse, because if your visa is attached to your relationship, like a stamp 3 or a stamp 4 for marriage, for example, you depend on being in this relationship to have the visa, and your partner needs to provide you with his documents for you to apply for your visa. And most of them would not give them the documents, and the woman will become undocumented, which is also a way of him to abuse her, because we have hearing from our clients that they are constantly being threats of being reported to the immigration and being deported because they are undocumented, and then they are undocumented because of the abuse. And so it's all like this abusive partner to creating ways of controlling and being really like having them as much control as he can in the life of this woman. For example, and also like what we experience a lot is that even when the woman have access to social welfare and housing, she has the right to access, she has the right visa, there is like a lack of information within the staff working on the housing departments and the social welfare that she is actually entitled to have. And so like we had a couple of clients that we had to go back and saying like, but look, and sending them the piece of information where, oh, look, this visa is stamp 4, she can access housing. And so she would be back there with the piece of paper to prove she has the right to access. Or even like we had to contact, to refer clients to lawyers so she could review her application for social welfare support, because she was denied as well due to her visa. Like it is really something that we need to work better on, understanding the visas and the access to these supports as well. About the support at the refuges, for example, of course, like you have to leave your house and go to a completely different place, and most likely the person that is working there will not speak your language. And if you have problem with speaking English, it would be very hard for you to be by yourself there and being able to understand everything that it's being saying to you and the information they are providing and what you have to do. And it's a lot of things going on since you arrived in the refugee. They want to access you, they want to access your needs, they want to provide you with information how to find support. And if you cannot understand this information, like it makes very hard. And also one issue that we can hear from our clients that had experience going to the refuge is, for example, the issue with childcare. Because when you are at the refuge, you are normally not close to your house. And if you have kids in school age, you will not be able to bring them to school if you are in the refuge. So you would have your kids 24/7 with you, and you would have a lot to do. You need to go to Dolphin's house, you need to go to the social fair, you need to go to the housing department, and you have all the kids with you. And it is tough. And also, like, you don't have even the headspace to really be there and I don't know, like get well emotionally to be able to do all these activities that it's really draining you, which is different, for example, for if you are a local, you can ask your mother to mind the kids for a couple of hours, or you have your auntie that across the road, or you know your way to navigate. But again, as a migrant, you know anybody most of the time, and you don't have, and the people you know for short period of time, you would not call them and say, oh, can you stay with my 3 kids for the whole day so I can do some things. Like it's not this level of relationship yet, so it's difficult. At the courts, it is another issue as well, because again, you don't understand the system, you don't understand the law, you don't know what's going on, like who is who there, even basic stuff like what can I say, what I cannot say here, like what are my rights. And you can feel as well that woman is being discriminated a lot on the decisions, who would have access, and when, like as a migrant, is important for you. For example, like for me, I'm from Brazil, my parents live in Brazil. I cannot imagine not bringing my daughter for my parents to see, or like so she can meet her grandparents. And I have friends, like a friend of mine, for example, very personal friend, her son just met her mother when he was 6 years old, because the father never gave the permission for her to travel to Brazil with the kids. And his reasoning was like, the Brazil is very dangerous and he could not allow the kid to travel. When he had money, he had very good lawyers, and always constantly in court he was getting on his own way, and she had just to deal with. And this is like, even after the separation, also a way of controlling the partner. And of course, like the language barriers, they are still there as well. Of course, like we have a lot of issues in general on accessing support for victims of domestic violence in Ireland, that like Irish woman, everybody it's facing, like a not effective legislation, for example, or lack of psychological support. Like it's crazy how you cannot find, like, especially free of charge. Like, I don't know where to refer clients anymore. Like I begging people to see my clients. Like it's really upsetting at this stage. Of course, not enough legal support, depending on like if they cannot access the legal aid, they are really in trouble. Like they don't have where to go. Like for us, like the Immigrant Council of Ireland, we do have lawyers, but our lawyers, they are specialized in immigration issues. They are not family law lawyers. So we cannot provide this kind of services to them. And it's very upsetting to see them like walking in court with a lawyer that they just met there because it's the lawyer they found, and they have no idea what the story of the case is. Like it's bad, it's really bad. But of course, yeah, I think the main thing about this talk that I'm doing now, and the issues I am telling you, is that like we don't want a different service for migrant women. We just want to be able to access services at the same level as an Irish woman with a good English can access, and being able to, I don't know, to enjoy of the support we have and the legislation we already have right now. And unfortunately, we are not being able to access for all the reasons I mentioned before. It's really challenging, but I believe now like we are getting on the way of good change. Like we are, I think, just the consultation for the third national strategy on gender-based violence just finished, I think on the 10th of March, I think was the deadline to send submissions. So I think when the migrant ethnic minority communities, they were consulted for the strategy. So I think a lot of good change is coming as well. Like we also, a couple of months ago, we organized ethnic minority observatory, domestic abuse observatory, where organizations working with supporting migrant women victims of domestic abuse, they are together to talk about their services, to try to collaborate, to try to share expertise. And so I think we are starting to go somewhere and starting to improve the services. And yeah, I think that's it.
So somebody is saying, thanks for your presentation, highlighting the structural deficits that need to be addressed. Do you think greater access to translated posters, etc., to signpost women to safety should be available widely in hospitals, pharmacies, shops, toilet doors? And the question is also, can migrant women seek support from refuges? The two questions: should there be more posters in translation posters, and also can women access refuges?
Yes, definitely. And I think even not just physical posters in places where we will have to go, for example, schools or GPs, places that we go, not just because we need support for domestic violence. I think they're more the strategic place to put this kind of information. And also online, because if you are searching on Google, for example, if you have in your own language, it's good because you can just type in your own language and it will direct you to the information in your own language. Yes, I think like as much information as possible. Of course, today, like we have like on the web page, depending on which provider you are using to access the internet, you can translate the pages on the top. So it's easier. You don't have to have your web page in various languages because it will translate automatically. But I think this kind of information and tricks on how to find information, I think it has to be passed to migrant communities so they are able to more independently looking for information as well. So I think, yeah, I think the policies, they really differ, especially as well on the length of time they can stay. Because, for example, if you are applying for a visa, it takes long for you to get the visa approval, and you need the visa to be able to access housing, for example. And so like we had a very critical case a couple of weeks ago of a lady that she was waiting for the immigration services on her visa application, and the refuge say like, look, we can just stay with you here for 12 weeks. And the 12 weeks, it's expiring in 2 weeks, you need to leave. And we were like crazy trying to find accommodation for her. And at the end, like we could arrange for an extension, like for 2 weeks for her. And meanwhile, we had to go to a lawyer and we had to like speed up her visa application so she could access emergency accommodation through the housing department. But it is like, I think it's good for the refugees if they can have this flexibility and try to, of course, accommodate if it is possible for her to stay a little bit longer if she's waiting for a decision or something like this. I think it would be nice.
It would, and likewise in our service here in Clare, we don't necessarily have that ability to do that extension either. We have quite a finite length of time that a woman can stay in refuge, and that's just based on resources as well, because for every bed that's taken, there could be somebody else who needs that bed, you know, and if somebody is the domestic abuse situation is past, but they're no longer in need of refuge because refuge is safety, they are in need of housing and emergency housing. So it is a bit of joined up thinking between the different services, and you know, the local authority to step up to the plate a little bit more there as well, I would suggest, and Department of Justice to take on responsibility as well. But that is one of the factors. There is a finite period of time that any woman can stay in refuge for her own mental health and for the children's development as well. But so is that another question? Nope, that's all the questions at the moment, unless anybody has anything.
I was just going to say something, Siobhan, that when I was doing the research, like it was obviously during COVID and we'd had a year of COVID, but a lot of the women said that, you know, they could see an increase in services being signposted because of COVID and the increase of domestic violence. But prior to that, they I suppose felt many of the same things that Valeria is saying, that they did really struggle with understanding what support would be there if they were to leave, if they were to do this. Absolutely no understanding of how the district courts work and applying for orders. So, you know, I think, you know, some Irish women would have a lot in common with migrant women in just the lack of information and not understanding entitlements of what to do and the anxiety of not knowing. So like it definitely has improved over COVID, but I guess that's probably an area that just needs to be worked on overall. It doesn't that.
Yeah, I think housing is just like, I don't know what we're gonna do to improve housing here. Like it's really critical at this stage. And like the ideal for migrant women would be like if she's applying for independent status visa, that she get like a temporary visa permission so she can access housing immediately, instead of, because so she has the 12 weeks that she's in the refuge to find the temporary accommodation or the emergency accommodation through the housing department like everybody. But like it is hard. Like we are trying to talk to them all the time about the changes, but let's keep doing.
Absolutely, yes. And it is about that joined up thinking. If one rule is something is going to immediately impact some other rule that makes them non-compatible.